Welcome to This Explainer. Look, we're tackling every founder's absolute biggest bottleneck today. How on earth do you continuously acquire massive amounts of knowledge when you have literally zero time? As an entrepreneur, your growth is capped by what you know. But let's be real, between putting out fires, managing your team, and trying to scale the whole shebang, sitting down to study for hours? Yeah, right. That's a luxury you just don't have. So today, we're going to completely rewire how you absorb information using a highly structured, data-backed approach. Ready? Let's dive right in. Here's our roadmap to completely reframing your knowledge acquisition strategy efficiently. 1. The entrepreneur's learning crisis. 2. Mapping 4 learning modes. 3. Why microlearning wins. And 4. The founder's execution playbook. All right, Section 1, the entrepreneur's learning crisis. Let's start by looking at the harsh biological realities that are honestly actively sabotaging your learning efforts every single day. Have you ever wondered why you're forgetting almost everything you learn? I mean, as a busy professional, you hustle, right? You listen to business advice on your commute, you skim articles between back-to-back meetings, and you try your best to stay ahead of industry trends. But have you noticed how fast that information just vanishes? You spend 30 minutes trying to grasp a new customer acquisition funnel, and by the next morning, it's just this blurry memory. Look, this isn't a lack of discipline on your part. It's actually a structural flaw in how we try to force information into an already exhausted brain. The data here is pretty brutal. Research shows that without revision, about 70% of your learning is completely forgotten within just one single day. Literally, one day. It's kind of like pouring water into a bucket where the bottom is completely missing. That is exactly what you're doing with your time when you try to cram complex startup knowledge without a proper framework. You're putting in the sweat, but you're losing almost 3/4 of the ROI within 24 hours. Ouch. And you gotta compound that with your biological limits. The sheer constraint here is staggering. The human attention span maxes out at just 10 to 15 minutes before your focus completely plummets. So when you try to force yourself to study some complex new subject for an hour after a grueling workday, you are literally fighting your own biology. Past that 15-minute mark, your attention drops, your comprehension crashes, and honestly, you're just spinning your wheels. Okay, moving to Section 2, mapping 4 learning modes. To actually solve this crisis, we need to map out the entire landscape of how we learn, weighing our precious time and attention against the actual depth of understanding we walk away with. As an entrepreneur, you essentially have 4 distinct options for acquiring knowledge. And don't worry, we're not going to skip a single one of them. Because the effectiveness of any learning comes down to a simple formula: the time and attention you commit versus the depth of understanding you get in return. Let's break down each of these 4 types so you can see exactly where you might be misallocating your time. First up is practice-driven learning. This is where you learn by doing. You know, like figuring out how to pitch investors by basically doing 50 terrible pitches first. The beauty here is that it requires relatively low dedicated study attention, but it yields a really high depth of knowledge because, well, you're out there in the trenches. The massive downside for a founder, though, it requires a very long runway for that understanding to build naturally. It's incredibly effective, but it is definitely not fast. Next, we have traditional deep learning or mastery. This gives you high depth, but man, it demands incredibly high, intense attention. This is your classic studying, sitting with a textbook, or trying to master advanced financial modeling over a weekend. While it's fantastic for depth, it is mentally exhausting. And let's face it, it's highly inefficient for a busy founder whose cognitive load is already at absolute maximum capacity by, 9 a.m.? Then there's what I call the founder's trap, passive exploratory learning. This is when you're endlessly browsing tech articles or doom-scrolling 45-minute strategy interviews on YouTube. It demands a high level of your attention. I mean, you're sitting there for almost an hour, but it leaves you with a shockingly low depth of true applicable understanding. It feels super engaging, it feels like work, but actually, it's shallow, and it just gives you a totally false sense of productivity. Finally, we have microlearning. Now, at first glance, this might look like the weakest link, right? It requires very low attention, and it delivers low depth per individual session. It utilizes these short 2 to 5 minute bursts of content that you often just discover casually. But, as we are about to see, this specific combination is actually the secret weapon for the time-poor innovator. Which brings us to Section 3, why microlearning wins. Let's dive right into the science of why this seemingly lightweight 4th option is actually the ultimate return on investment for your extremely limited time. So microlearning perfectly bypasses those biological attention limits we talked about earlier. Because the content is strictly under that 10 to 15-minute threshold, you never hit that wall where your focus falls off a cliff. Even better, because it requires low attention, your brain absorbs these short, focused explanations in a relaxed state. And the research from our sources is crystal clear on this. Information absorbed in a relaxed state is remembered far, far better than information forced into a stressed, exhausted mind. It completely prevents cognitive overload, a total game changer. Now, here is the absolutely crucial point. While one single session of microlearning gives you low depth, repeating this process changes the math entirely. By deploying this method repeatedly, piece by piece over time, you build a bridge across the chasm from shallow familiarity straight to deep mastery. You get all the benefits of traditional deep studying, but without the exhaustion. You are effectively hacking that brutal forgetting curve we talked about earlier. Let's wrap it up with Section 4, the Founder's Execution Playbook. Let's see how this actually translates into reality. How do you implement this when you are running a literal business? Well, here is your strict anti-binge operating procedure. Here's the exact playbook. Step 1, use this specifically for hard concepts. You know, those things outside your main subject expertise that you just can't seem to grasp through normal studying. Step 2, find and watch exactly one focused explanation. Just one, keeping it strictly to a max of 5 to 7 minutes. And step 3, and listen, this is the most important part, space your sessions apart. Do not binge. Seriously, binging just turns this right back into passive exploratory learning and completely ruins your attention. Keep it brief, stay relaxed, and just walk away. As you look at your chaotic schedule, remember that the margins of your day hold the key to your continuous mastery. You do not need a 4-hour block to learn something new. You just need 5 intentional minutes, a relaxed mind, and the strict discipline to walk away before you burn out. So I'm going to leave you with a challenge. Look at your calendar right now. Where are those 5 spare minutes hiding today? And what complex concept are you finally going to conquer?